Welcome into the College Football Power Hour. He's Jason Fitz. That is Adam Breneman. And I am Caroline Fenton. We're recording this pod on a Tuesday. Rumor has it there are still water bottles and beer cans and hot dog wrappers raining in Austin, Texas. I don't know. That's just what I hear, Fitz.
I mean, I don't know. McConaughey sent out a letter that said that they can't do that anymore. So does that resonate? Like, if you're a college kid or an alumni or whoever was in that stadium that is trash enough to throw something on the field, and then you see a sternly worded letter written by Matthew McConaughey, are you suddenly sorry? Like, everything about this is a disaster. And by the way, $250,000 fine. I scoff at that. I laugh at that. Think about the amount of money at Texas. Also, the kids the people that threw that stuff, they ain't paying the fines out of their pockets. So I don't know. Until I see lifetime bans in the stadium from tons of different people, I'm not freaking out. This is a joke. Make it like a $25 million fine, and then all of a sudden people will actually take note and they'll stop acting like idiots at the game.
I love Kirby Smart's post-game comments after that, where he said they tried to beat us by overturning the call. They tried to beat us by throwing stuff on the field. And then he said your entire network didn't want us to win to the sideline reporter. It reminded me why players want to play for Kirby Smart. He's a beast. He's great in those moments of getting guys to believe in him, and he was right.
I love Adam. I do love that the way you said that though, because hey, let's be clear. Kirby wasn't really talking about what just happened. At the end of the day, Kirby doesn't truly believe that somebody has it out for his team. And I've talked to enough former officials. They'll tell you when they miss a call, it guts them for life. There are officials that still remember random games they missed a call in. Officials take their job really seriously. Kirby knows that. He's using that as his platform to make a statement for future games, to make a statement for future coverage, to plant a seed for future officials. This is Kirby playing chess and sending a message to the world.
And normally whenever Kirby Smart makes comments like that in the postgame, everybody doubted us, it's a massive eye roll, because it's you're the number one team in the country. You were a 21-point favorite. Literally nobody doubted you. Nobody. But Kirby's been a master manufacturer of bulletin board material, has done it so many times. This time he was right. You know what? He was right, because everybody did pick Texas. Texas was the number one team in the country. It is so wild to me that Georgia truly was the underdog and not just trying to play this fake underdog story. Nope, we did count you out, and you did prove us wrong.
Fitz, to your point about that post-game interview on the field, I've been around head coaches who actually have who they would call their general manager or chief of staff, who they debrief with right after the game to talk about what they want to say on that post-game interview, because that's one of the most visible times they have as a head coach, right? When you're on national television, everyone's going to hear what you're about to say. There is definitely strategy there, and Kirby Smart was trying to rally his team. There's nothing better than an us against the world mentality, and I'm sure he had that planned out, and it fit because it went viral on social media. And also, all the recruits are seeing that and saying, man, I'm going to go play for Kirby Smart.
And all respect in the world to Matthew McConaughey. Big How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days fan. Love a good rom-com. Love a good Matthew McConaughey movie. If I'm a Texas player, I just gave up a big play. I'm Quinn Ewers. I just turned the ball over. I just took a big sack. And Matthew McConaughey is in my ear telling me what I should have done differently or could have done better. I'm sorry. I'm out. Matthew, put some pads on, okay? I don't want to hear it. I don't need any coaching from the Minister of Culture.
Could you imagine the opposite? Could you imagine Quinn Ewers being on set at the Matthew McConaughey movie, and after a take, Quinn going up and just getting in his face man, you got to feel this character. You got this in you. I believe in you. You could do this. And then walking out no, there's never going to be a moment where I believe that Matthew McConaughey wants a football player talking about his process. Maybe he should just stick to doing what he does and let them do what they do.
I think that is a very wise decision. Maybe whenever Matthew McConaughey listens to the podcast, because I know that he's a huge fan of the College Football Power Hour, I might take some notes. Put that in the suggestion box.
He should come on as a guest. We'd love to have him.
We would love to have, maybe if we have time. I don't know. We have a
it's only an hour.
Pretty tight schedule. An hour. Yeah, sorry. Maybe if we could squeeze you in for a couple of minutes, Matthew. But always an open invitation to Matthew McConaughey. So we have wrapped up week 8. We are right at the midpoint of the college football season. And it's crazy that we're halfway through. It feels like it's been 5 minutes, but it also feels like we figured everything out. We have everything down to a science. But if the first 8 weeks of college football have taught us anything, it's that it is very much so a week-to-week league, especially this season. So now that we are at the midpoint, it is time for some midterm grades in college football. So our esteemed producer, Emmy Franks, has randomly generated some teams. We have no idea what she's throwing at us. And we are going to give our on-the-spot midterm grades for the college football season.
All right, I got Northwestern. Emmy, that's a good one. Northwestern in the Big Ten. I want to say their record is like, they have 2 or 3 wins? I don't think it's been a great season for Northwestern so far, but I mean, they're playing in like a half-made stadium this season. So what can you really expect? I mean, they got like 20,000 fans at their games. We'll go like C for Northwestern, and that's pretty much what you'd expect from a Northwestern football program. I remember they lost to Duke early in the season. I think they lost to Wisconsin last week or 2 weeks ago too. So not a ton of wins coming out of the Northwestern program this season.
Also, the loss to Indiana there, 41-24. That I mean, you get some street cred for that loss. Does that count as a quality loss? I mean, look, it's not like we had high expectations for Northwestern. It feels like giving them a C. Northwestern feels like they expected a C and they got a C. Like nobody's going home and complaining about that one, right?
Every season's a C for Northwestern.
Just to put this out there, right? Like it's the only C that Northwestern has ever gotten, by the way. Nobody at Northwestern gets a C. We're grading on a curve here, right? Like a Northwestern C is not an Alabama C, correct?
Oh, correct. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
fair.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grading based off of expectations, I think, is fair.
All right. I think I'm up next. So we'll figure out. The randomizer has given me Nevada. I get Nevada. So look, at Nevada, I did not expect. Like UNLV, I could have given UNLV a good grade. But if we got Nevada, I'm going to have to look it up. We'll see where Nevada is. The Wolfpack at this point, arousing 3-5, 9th in the Mountain West. You know, you look at their losses. They got losses to Georgia Southern. That's a bad loss. But they've got good losses. They got good loss to SMU, a good loss to Minnesota, 27-0. They lost to Fresno State. I don't know. Like Nevada, for a second thought, I felt like they were turning it around. They are not now. 3-5. I don't know. C-. I'll give it a C- at this point. It's got wins over Troy and wins over Eastern Michigan and a win over Oregon State, who, contrary to popular belief, still actually plays college football. So I feel like C- is that's pretty good. Well, I'll give them that C-.
We have been talking about Nevada's expectations all season long. So that's fair. It's the hottest topic in all of college football.
I was like, have we been talking about that?
I've been talking about UNLV's expectations all week, but that's a slightly different. All right, Caroline, you're up next.
Yeah.
Let's see who you get on this one.
For anyone who's new to the podcast, that was a joke. Okay, I am up next. Northern Illinois, which is very interesting because the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about Northern Illinois, and really might I add, the only thing that comes to mind when we talk about Northern Illinois, is the one thing, going to Notre Dame and beating Notre Dame on Notre Dame's field. I mean, like that's the biggest thing to me. So let me pull up exactly what Northern Illinois' record is at this moment. But even no matter what the record is, I'm inclined to go A.
That's what I'm saying.
I think
if you go 1-11 and your one win is at Notre Dame, that's an A. That is an A. So I'll go A for a Northern Illinois team that's now 4-3 and 8th in the MAC. Doesn't matter. Those players, those coaches are going to remember that one win for the rest of their lives. A. Go Huskies.
The college football world will remember that one. Like, nobody's going to talk about the rest of their schedule ever, but in 10 years, it'll be like, remember what Northern Illinois did? Like, that's been immortalized. Definitely. I might even be A+. Doesn't even matter what happens the rest of the way.
Before I get to mine, this random generator loves bad football. Northwestern, Nevada, and Northern Illinois. I mean, can we get some good teams on here?
I think we're just getting tested by our random generator of how much homework have you really done?
Yeah. How much football do you actually know?
We're learning we shouldn't be teachers.
Okay. I got Oklahoma State in the Big 12. Okay. Oklahoma State's been an interesting one this season. We've talked about them a lot. I'm going to pull up their schedule. Because they have underperformed much of the season. And they had a bunch of expectations going into the season. And quite frankly, let's pull it up here. I think they have 2 or 3 wins. Oklahoma State is 3-4 in the Big right now. They've lost 4 in a row: BYU, West Virginia, Kansas State, and Utah. And I remember, guys, we were talking about them after that Utah loss because everyone had they were what, top 20 team in the country at one point, maybe even higher. So I mean, it's got to be in like the D category for Oklahoma State right now. It's just Mike Gundy's got to figure it out, and lost a tough one to BYU. I mean, at the last drive of the game, but it seems like Mike Gundy is. Things have not been good in his tenure as of late. And at what point does Oklahoma State kind of figure out that like he's not the future for them at head coach? I mean, losing 4 games in a row ain't going to cut it for you very, very often. I give him a D, maybe even F at this point with 4 straight losses.
Yeah, things haven't been good on the field or in the headlines for Mike Gundy as of late. I think they get a D alone, just in a microscope, because of Ollie Gordon's production, or should I say lack of production this year. There is no excuse for the Doak Walker Award winner to come back, and his best game came against BYU this past week. He rushed for over 100 yards, but before that, 50 yards against West Virginia, 42 against Utah, 49 against Arkansas. Like, we're talking about a game-wrecking kind of running back that really hasn't done anything that really pops off the page.
Yeah, this team, you guys are being too generous. I can't say this loud enough. Oklahoma State gets a big old fat F. Like, they get the sort of F that you're calling their parents and saying, like, something is wrong because this team is not playing. You look at their wins. They got 3 wins. One's against South Dakota State. I don't care. One's against Tulsa. I don't care. The other one's against Arkansas in double overtime. Since then, when they played actual legitimate football teams, Utah, Kansas State, West Virginia, BYU, they've lost all 4 of those. And I don't care that it was close against BYU. Like, this is not anywhere near what we thought the expectations would be. This is a flat-out F for me.
I don't want to take Fitz's class.
How high were they ranked at one point in the season? Were they like top 15 in the country at one point? I mean, they were pretty high, right?
They were high, but I think they maxed out in the high teens. I don't think they got to top 15. But yeah, there was definitely an expectation.
Crazy.
17 going into the season. All right,
so I'm up next with my midterm grades, and I'm on a roll for giving bad grades. I'll give a good one to this one. I got it. I see it. I love it. I want it. Boise State in the Mountain West, and it's interesting because this is all about one man, right? We all know that Ashton Jeanty has become just a rock-solid superstar. Their only loss this year was at Oregon, 37-34, in a game where Jeanty still ran for 192 yards and nobody gave them any expectation to win that football game. They have won convincingly over and over and over again. And you could argue that their level of opponent isn't the same as other schools' level of opponent. That's fine, but they are in that level. So amongst their peers, they are kicking the snot out of them every single time. They got a big game for me against UNLV on Friday night. But guys, I think we all fully expect Boise State to be a playoff team. We fully expect Ashton Jeanty to be in New York, and we expect him to, even if he doesn't win it, he will definitely be a Heisman finalist. I don't think you can ask for better. This is an A+ season so far for Boise State.
Yeah.
I don't disagree in the slightest. I mean, the fact that Boise State has now become part of the national conversation, that alone, for a positive reason, might I add, that is an A+ alone.
That game Friday night is a huge one. I mean, Boise State UNLV has serious playoff implications. If Boise State loses that game, and they probably are going to get UNLV twice this week, and they'll probably get them at the Mountain West Championship. Like, that opens now the path for the American Conference winner to be the automatic bid to the playoffs if Boise State loses this game. They'll then have 2 losses, and including one to Oregon. So it's got big implications for a lot of teams in college football.
Fitz, your team, UNLV. You could be their minister of culture.
No doubt.
Could be their Matthew McConaughey.
If UNLV gets 2 wins over Boise State, they got 1 loss on the schedule. Maybe okay. Let me dream, Brendan.
Yeah,
if
maybe
you can dream Notre Dame, then let me just dream UNLV.
A girl can dream. A girl can dream. Okay, random generator. I am up next. SMU. Ooh, I like this one. I think for right now, SMU's first season in the ACC, they're 6-1. I think I have to call this an A- to an A. I don't know what the expectations for SMU were preseason, but I don't think that they were overly lofty. There is a path for SMU to get to the college football playoff. There is a path. I don't see them beating Miami. I don't see them beating Clemson, but you can make the argument that they could get there. I don't think we were talking about college football playoff expectations for SMU going into this season. So, first year in a new conference, You get the fortune of getting Florida State in the downest of down years.
Yeah.
You go on the road and beat a really solid Louisville team. I'll go A for SMU. I feel awfully generous giving out 2 A's. I'm like the cupcake teacher that everybody wants to take. But these are 2 teams that I think are really, really pleasantly surprised with how their seasons have shaken out through 8 weeks.
There's no one that thought SMU was going to be a top 25 team in the country at this point in their first year as a Power 4 program in the ACC. And now they're 22nd or 23rd in the country. I mean, it has been a remarkable season for SMU. And also they've recruited extremely well. And they've always said, if you can recruit at SMU and recruit in that Texas demographic down there and all the surrounding states, you can build a winning program. SMU's looking pretty good, and they're playing good football.
Yeah, and their one loss was to BYU, and I looked it up to refresh. They were tied in that game with 2 minutes to go. So SMU is 2 minutes away from being an undefeated football team that would be even seen with higher regard. Yeah, I give this. I might even be A+, Carolina. I mean, it feels like a strong
feels
moment.
Pretty high.
Where's that little
A+
plus
is reserved for. I don't think anyone in college football is an A+. Not even Oregon.
Oregon's undefeated. What? I mean, that's not A+. What are you? There's always room for improvement, teacher.
They've had some stinkers even in games that they have won.
Penn State A+, undefeated. I can't believe Carolina's given 2 A's so far. I just really can't believe it.
Deservingly so.
Yeah.
SMU and Northern Illinois. Those are some A's from me. A's all around. Everybody gets an A.
Everyone gets an A
Europe
for Carolina. All right, we got LSU. Okay, LSU 6-1, 8th ranked team in the country. I mean, if it wasn't for that loss against USC in week 1, we'd all be talking about LSU as a top, number 2 or 3 team in the country right now. So I'm going to go with B+ for LSU. They've had some games that haven't gone well, but they've won, like the game against, was it South Carolina? Yeah, just that nasty game that they shouldn't have won. But they found ways to win, and they can take that B+ to an A- with a win against Texas A&M this weekend. But I think it's been cool to see Brian Kelly kind of turn that thing around after that week 1 loss to USC. And now it's crazy to think about where those 2 programs are. USC couldn't be more down bad at LSU at number 8 in the country in the AP poll. So I'll go B+ for LSU.
Caroline, I'll defer to you on this as our resident LSU expert. I would just say it's easy to forget that South Carolina game was close, that Ole Miss game went to overtime, right? Like they've had some close calls here for a team that looks really talented. By the end of the year, they win their games. They're going to be A+. Right now, I don't know. I give them a solid B, but it would almost lean B-. Like it's B, but where are you on it, Caroline?
I think the calling card of Brian Kelly, at least so far in his fairly short tenure at LSU, is his teams get better. As the season goes on, his teams get better. So if you would have asked me after week 3, week 4, what grade LSU got after losing a tough one to USC, barely hanging on at South Carolina, and had to have a couple of calls go your way in order to win that one, giving up 150 yards to some kid that I've never heard of from Nicholls State, I probably would have said C to C-. But I agree with a B to B+, because there were 2 things that LSU really struggled to do in the first few weeks of the season. Play defense, period, and run the football. Well, the defense has looked much better over the past couple of weeks because of Whit Weeks, who we are affectionately calling the Vanilla Badger, which frankly I love. They're getting stops. They're getting after the quarterback. They've been able to stop the run for the most part over the past couple of weeks. And LSU is starting to develop an identity in the run game. LSU could not run the football. There is zero excuse that at LSU you have difficulty running the football. But Caden Durham, the young freshman, has really emerged. He's gotten more and more opportunities. He had 21 carries against Arkansas on Saturday. So you're starting to see this LSU offensive identity kind of come into form. So I would agree. Right now, I think I would say a solid B, because you have the blemishes early on in the season. You beat Texas A&M. You have a fairly favorable schedule coming down the pipe. You get to host Alabama, a team that looks like it's a team that has a lot of question marks around it, an Oklahoma team that can't move the football. Vanderbilt's obviously trickier than we anticipated than earlier in the season, but you get them at home as well. So you're able to take down Texas A&M. There's a path for LSU.
What's the better nickname at this point? Vanilla Badger or BYJ? That's the real question out of all of this.
BYJ has to win it. BYJ's the best.
Yeah. The fact that he came out with it and that it's his too, like I hope he's getting so rich on that. Like just so rich. All right. I'm up next on the midterm randomizer. I got one more that I get to get in here. Oh, and I get Texas. Okay.
Ooh.
I want to sit here and say A, but I can't say A because I can't get what happened last week out of my brain. So then I had very high expectations for Texas, and the fact that they've gotten to where they get, they've gotten to where they are right now. Gotten to where they get, good. The fact that they've gotten to where they are right now, having a revolving door at quarterback, I think is actually really amazing. I don't want to undersell the fact that they lost their starting quarterback and it didn't hurt them. And I don't want to undersell that a week ago I was saying they don't have a weakness, but they got their butts flat out whooped. And that can't get out of your brain because they're supposed to be able, like, it's not bad to lose to Georgia. It's bad to get just destroyed by Georgia. It's bad to not look competitive against Georgia. And then it makes you rethink everything we've seen. Maybe you haven't really played teams. I'll give them a B. And again, I could almost go B- based just on last week's game. Like that is such a stench in the air. I don't know how you get rid of it. All right. What do you think?
The fact that last week we were talking about how Texas was unanimously the number one team in the country and looked like the most complete team in the country, and now we're talking B-, like that is how much things change in this league. And you lose one game, and suddenly we start to nitpick how a game was just a little bit too close for comfort against Mississippi State when it was so easy to forget about that before they dropped that game. Like that is wild to me. I would still go A-, because I still think that Texas has been such a complete team, even against kind of booty teams that they've had in their schedule before Georgia. But that Georgia game was a big smudge, at least offensively. Like what we saw defensively, I couldn't move the football. I don't love the way that Sark handled the benching of Quinn Ewers and bringing in Arch Manning and the inevitable controversy that's going to cause. But that's a different story for a different day. I would go A- for Texas, but I respect your grading scale, Fitz.
I like more the B+, A- range for Texas because of how dominant they've been all season. We were talking about how Texas, I said it on here, that Texas is by far and away the number one team in the country 2 weeks ago. And then they had a down game against Georgia, who may actually become the number one team in the country and has really only played one bad half of football against Alabama this season. So I think the fact that loss was against a team like Alabama, a team like Georgia, makes it that much better for Texas. And Texas still controls their own destiny and can accomplish everything they want to accomplish. I think if you told most Texas fans that they would have one loss this season and it would be to Georgia, they would have taken that, 10 times out of 10.
No doubt. All right, the final grade of today's show.
Oh, boy.
Miami.
Ooh, welcome to Miami.
Benito, Miami.
Ooh, Miami. This is spicy. Ooh.
What's spicy about an undefeated team with a Heisman Trophy?
Because how
Their
good are they?
defense sucks.
How good are they, though?
But because of that, I have to give Miami an A-. Because you needed 300 yards in the fourth quarter alone and a superhero performance from your starting quarterback to beat Cal. Because you needed a really bad call, not just at the end of the Cal game, the bad targeting call or lack of thereof, and then the bad call at the end of the Virginia Tech game. Bad, maybe more controversial is the better word. The controversial catch or no catch call at the end of the Virginia Tech game in order to squeak by that team. So this Miami defense, I feel like, is going to hurt Miami at some point. Maybe it's not in the regular season because Miami doesn't have an overwhelmingly difficult schedule down the stretch. But I don't think that you can play with a defense that gives up consistently 450, 500 yards a game in the college football playoff and expect to win very many games. Now, the good thing is you do have Superman at quarterback. You do have a Cam Ward at under center that can literally do anything and can win you football games. So that brings Miami up a little bit into the A range, but I just can't get past that defense and how unsustainable it feels like Miami's brand of football is.
It is unsustainable, but this isn't the final grade for the season. This isn't the prediction of where they're going to go. This is the midterm for where they are right now. For where they are right now.
And the defense has been bad.
But the defense,
through the midterms.
But they've won. Like at some point, there are so few teams this year that haven't had a half or a full game that's just been forgettable football. And we sit here and we're like, well, you survived that tough game in Lexington or whatever the narrative is every single time. Like, for whatever reason, Miami doesn't look good. I'm not sure they're even a good football team. But if you could be undefeated at this point and not be a good football team, you get an A. Like if we'll use the college analogy, if you're just damn dumb and you're in class and you don't deserve to do well in your grade, like you shouldn't get good grades, you're not very smart, but somehow you're acing every test. Yeah, you still might not be smart, but you're acing every test. That's Miami. Their defense isn't very smart, but they're acing every test. A+. Miami gets an A+.
I was going to say that, Fitz. I would venture to say if you're undefeated in a Power 4 conference and you have a Heisman contender with the leading odds for the Heisman in the country, you get an A+. I mean, that's just how it is. So it is hard to win football games.
It's not how it is.
And they're 7-0. They haven't lost a game.
But so they've played too close for comfort in a lot of those games.
But
to get
the test is winning, right? If the test is winning, they're undefeated. They get an A+. The test is the games.
Yeah.
The test is the games, and you can pass that test.
The test is not the box score.
Wait, that's totally part of it.
I don't think any of us believe that Miami's a good football team, but like a great football team.
So why would I give them an A+?
Because I don't think their defense is underperforming to the capability of the defense. I just think their defense isn't very good. So if they're out there,
you don't get credit just because you got a bad defense.
Well, when you're undefeated, like if you're winning through your liabilities, I give you credit for that. Like you're masking your deficiencies over and over and over again. You're able to put up so many yards that you make it look like a video game in the fourth quarter to win games. Man, I don't know. I turn around, I'm like, is there anything? Do I look at anything that Miami is doing, even when they're terrible defensively? I don't think they're underperforming. I just think they're a bad defensive team. And like, if you're a bad defensive team and you're still undefeated in this year of college football, huzzah! Like golf clap for that all day long.
I'll go back to high school math classes, which brings back a little bit of PTSD, a little shiver down my spine.
I spent most of those skipping those. So
brutal. That's why I'm here today, is because I couldn't do math. You can come up with the correct answer, but you have to show your work. And if the showing of your work is not correct, you get points deducted on a math test, even if you came up with the right answer. Miami has come up with the correct answer every single time, but their work, it's bad. Showing their work is horrendous. There's eraser smudges, and there's the incorrect numbers, there's signs, and there's doodles in the corner. Like, Miami has not shown their work very well, but they come out with a win, which is great. Winning and losing is all that matters. You win your games, you get in the playoff. But if I'm grading on a scale here, I have to dock Miami for a little bit because of the process.
My counter argument to that, because it's a very good argument of show your work. I respect the show your work argument. The only thing I'd say is that college football is a little bit more like the SATs, right? And we all know the kid in the SATs that had no idea what anything meant. He just filled in the Scantron, like went ACDC the whole way and still put up a massive score, right? Like sometimes, you're right, you got to show your work in certain math classes. College football, no, it's the SATs.
You're in a math class.
You're filling out the bubble. And if you happen to ACDC your way to a perfect score, again, chef's kiss. Like, they have a perfect score. They put up a perfect score on the SATs. They might be dumb as a box of rocks, but they still put up the perfect score on the SATs. I'm giving that an A+.
If you ACDC your way through the SAT and you get into Harvard, how are you going to fare at an Ivy League school when you got there on accident? That is what Miami is going to run into in the college football playoff. They ACDC'd themselves into the playoff, and now you have to play Georgia. Good luck.
I agree with that. They are going to get, if they can't play better defense than that, they're going to get run out of the stadium in the college football playoff, which is going to be electric to watch, by the way. But
it's going to be great.
Yeah, again, we're not prognosticating what's going to happen. I'm just saying right now, I don't have to worry about, like, I'm the guidance counselor. I don't have to worry about what happens when they get to Harvard. That's between them and their God. I just got to get them out of this high school.
I'm the guidance counselor. I'll tell you. I'll give credit to Caroline here. That the showing your work is one of the best defenses of your grading system there that I've heard. That was pretty good. I didn't think about that because they do make you do that in school. That's a good point. How did we get to that answer? Is what we do.
Oh, you played football. How do you know what they made you do in math class? Come on.
I didn't take my own classes.
You went to Juilliard. How do you know what they asked you to
I'm
do
a
in math
musician.
classes?
I can only count to 4. That's fact. I only got 4. That's it.
That's all you need. Just an 8 count. That's all you need. I still give Miami an A-. I'm sorry. Only complete team. And to be completely fair, I wouldn't give Oregon an A+ either. They're an undefeated team. They're a team that has looked really good. They took down one of the best teams in the country in Ohio State, but it took a really close game against Boise State, a close 3 quarters against Idaho. Like, in order to get an A+ at Fenton University, you got to be a complete team.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Caroline has a D on Rate My Professor for her grading system.
Everybody hates me. But I bring in cupcakes every Friday, so that helps it. I feel like a little bit.
Toughest professor there is. You Fitz. What I mean, you win every game and you get a B+, A-. I mean, come on.
Tell Florida State what happens when you win every game.
You get an A- or B+ when you win every game, but we just forgive the close games that LSU didn't look pretty in, and we give them a higher grade than they should have gotten. Yep. What are we doing? What are we doing?
I did not forgive the games that LSU was close in.
By this logic, the 2 bad games for LSU that they snuck out and won, they're C- at this point. What do we like? We're going to dock teams for not getting wins the prettiest way.
You can give them a C-. That's fine. But okay, I will say, ACC schedule and how you look at an ACC schedule against Virginia Tech and Cal versus how you look against Ole Miss and the number 1 team in the country. Because this Miami team reminds me so much of LSU of last year. You have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, or a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback, I should say. You have an electric offense and a quarterback that can win you games single-handedly, and a defense that can't stop a nosebleed. And the difference between Miami and LSU is LSU was playing Ole Miss in Oxford, was playing Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and Miami's playing Cal.
That's facts.
That's the difference.
That's facts.
Yep.
All right, let's hit a quick break. It's spooky season, so we'll get festive coming up next after a quick break. This is Fitz's season. For those who do not know Fitz, Halloween is when you thrive.
It's facts.
This is your season.
Look, I love all of this, like the scary, the cute, all of it. Anything Halloween related, I'm in. Horror movies play 24/7. The house gets turned into a massive haunted house. It's a whole thing. This is definitely my time of year. Yes.
This is also spooky season for a lot of college football teams as well. Awfully scary. So let's get into the scariest performances since it is Halloween season. Scary good, scary bad. Things that have just straight up scared us. Ashton Ginty just standing in the backfield. Just nightmare fuel. Fitz, we'll start with you. What has been scary good, scary bad? What is just straight up spooky to you so far this season?
Okay, so I'm going to give you from last week. There were 2 performances that I think really stand out. And I'm going to start with the good because we've had a lot of bad here. I'm going to start with the good. I'm throwing this to you guys. You didn't know this was going to come up. But this came up, me talking to our good friend Mike Golick Jr. the other day. We were talking about college football, and he said, if you haven't watched New Mexico's quarterback, Devin Dampier, you're missing out. You should watch this kid play. It's amazing. So I went back yesterday because I'm a nerd, and I spent a bunch of time watching games. And he came off a game last week. I will read you the stat line against Colorado State. All right, he came off the game last week where he had I can't pull the stat line up. It went away on me. Let me just say this. He had an epic game last week against Colorado State. And then on top of the epic game throwing, he also had an epic game running the football. You watch this kid play. Absolutely. I want to give him a little credit. We haven't talked about him. I just discovered him. He's going to be playing somewhere big time next year when he hits the transfer portal. I'm sorry, New Mexico. They're not going to be able to hold him. It's going to be a big game. I finally got it. 27 for 272 passing, and then also 15 carries for 105 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, he is truly a dual threat doing everything quarterback. So I want to give him some scary good love for no good reason. Now I'll give you something that everybody here can know that's shockingly bad. Like the scary of the scary. And it's the effort we saw last week from Nebraska in getting absolutely demolished. And this is not about our playoff talk early in the year. It's not about what we thought Nebraska would be. It's about none of that. This is about right now. I think we all agree on this show. that Matt Rule, one of his greatest strengths is he's the creator of culture. When you get your butt kicked, the way they got their butts kicked, you got to reestablish that culture to every person in the room, because the message you just sent in that butt whooping is we're not ready to compete. And that's against Indiana. Now, I know Indiana's getting a lot of love, and deservedly so. Game Day's going there this week. It's a great story. But to get demolished and not even look competitive, Breneman, to me, that's scary for right now. But it's also scary for everybody in that locker room that's trying to trust their coach that they're on the right path. And now you're looking around thinking, man, are we a lot farther off than we thought we were?
And it's even tougher when you see Indiana in year one of Kirk Cinetti doing and having the success they're having, when now Nebraska's been believing in Matt Rule, and they have the NIL resources, they have all the commitment from their administration, and they haven't found a way to put a great season together yet. The worst part about Nebraska to me is everyone talked about how good Nebraska's run defense was. They hadn't allowed a rushing touchdown all season heading into last week, let up 5 rushing touchdowns against Indiana. To your point, Fitz, that is a lack of will and a lack of fight by the Nebraska defense. And then you have a true freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola. Well, you don't support your true freshman quarterback by having the 14th best rushing offense in the Big Ten. That's not how you help a young quarterback. That's not good, and it's not gonna develop a quarterback, and it's not gonna win you many football games. So, Nebraska fans, there's not a lot of patience going on in Nebraska, and that getting ran off the field by Indiana certainly doesn't help Caroline.
And I thought, looking ahead to this game last week, that, look, Indiana's been a really fun and cutesy little story, but this is big man football. Like, this is Big Ten defensive football. Let's see you do it against a defense like that and not the 60th, 85th ranked defense that Indiana had seen throughout the entirety of their schedule. And they did. They didn't prove me wrong necessarily. They confirmed to me that this isn't just a cute little story, that this is actually a legitimate team that can compete against really good Big Ten defenses. What's scaring you, Adam?
Well, it's a little bit of a positive. Cade Klubnik is scary, scary good this season. And everyone wants to talk about Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, Cam Ward at Miami, Ohio State and Will Howard. Well, Cade Klubnik just sits in the shadows and continues balling out at Clemson. I said it after Clemson lost to Georgia. Just give it until mid-October, and Clemson will be right back where they should be, a solidified top 10 team with a top quarterback in the country. And Cade Klubnik now has thrown for 20 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions this season. So Georgia exposed what Clemson had to work on in that second half in week 1, and now Klubnik is going to lead them to an ACC title game. They're going to be 11-1 in that game, and Klubnik will get the dole out against Cam Ward with some serious Heisman implications in that game. Let's just say it looks like Cade Klubnik is going to turn up the pace, and it's very realistic that Cade Klubnik will get to 3,500 yards and 35 touchdowns this season, and Cade Klubnik could very easily be represented in New York at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. There's a very clear path to that happening. So, Scary Cade Klubnik, scary good right now.
Also, I love the way it's like they've decided they're going to let him use his legs more. I mean, just realistically, he's running the football really well, which is setting up the pass. Like, all of these things. He's only taken, I think, 5 sacks all year. So you think about the efficiency, you know, I take a shot every time I talk about that, but like you think about the efficiency of his throws, but also the fact that it feels like they've sort of opened more of the offense to just let Cade be a playmaker. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch. You're right. And I'll scream loudly again. I was wrong leaving Clemson out to die early and wrong leaving Cade out I mean, it feels like this is exactly what Dabo was banking on. His team's getting better every single week. And right now, if I had to pick on a neutral field, as we always say, if I had to pick, I'd take Clemson to win the ACC.
Yeah. Neutral field, take a shot.
Neutral field test. Culture, efficiency, neutral field.
UNLV.
UNLV, yeah.
Those are the 4
Big
commandments of the college football, Big Ten. Yeah. And Rutgers. Yeah, those are our commandments here on the show. And I'm with you, Fitz. We all just kind of forgot about Clemson. And I think it was because, at least I can speak for myself, I had this preconceived notion that Clemson was going to be bad anyway, just because I didn't believe in Dabo's approach to the transfer portal. The fact that they didn't take a single transfer portal player. I thought in today's college football, when every other roster is getting better, when you are losing talent, when you're losing depth into the transfer portal and you're not replenishing it, you cannot compete. So whenever we saw them struggle against Georgia, whenever we saw 2 transfer portal wide receivers score on Clemson in that Georgia game, I thought, there it is on full display. A transfer portal approach that is working and a lack of a transfer portal approach that is not working. So I think that's why I just kind of wrote them off entirely until it was like, hold on, Clemson's not just winning like Miami, they're demolishing teams. Like, they are putting up gaudy numbers. So Cade Klubnik is a guy that I don't think is getting enough talk and isn't getting enough love for how good he's been since week 1. Like, we can allow teams to get better throughout the season. We can allow that, and Clemson absolutely has. Is there anything that's been scary bad for you, Adam?
I don't have anything scary bad right now, but I'm excited to hear what you think is scary bad, because I saw what you put on that sheet, and I'm excited to talk about it.
There are places where football is more than just football, and in the state of Alabama, football is religion. It is God, it is family, and it is the SEC. In that order. Those are the 3 important things. Those are the commandments of the state of Alabama. Football in the state of Alabama has been spooky, and not in a good way. That we're looking at an Alabama team with 2 losses before November for the first time since Nick Saban's first year at Alabama. And oh yeah, by the way, one of those was to Vanderbilt, a team that they have not lost to since 1984. And oh yeah, by the way, even in some of the games that Alabama has won, they didn't look very good. An Alabama team that should have been pissed off and motivated after getting embarrassed to Vanderbilt, after the uprights went into the river for the second time in 3 years, they turn around and kind of have a dud against South Carolina and just barely eke by, and it takes a Lenora Sellers interception at the end of the game to win that game. And then you follow that up with a loss at Neyland Stadium, where it was hard to move the football, where it was penalty after penalty after missed field goal after overthrown receiver. Like, Alabama has not looked like Alabama except for the first half against Georgia. And they get credit for that. They get credit for beating a really good Georgia team. And then there's Auburn. Auburn has yet to win an SEC game. They are 2-5 on the season. They lost to Cal at the beginning of the year. Auburn is dreadful. Auburn just gave up a double-digit lead in the 4th quarter to Missouri. And their quarterback left and got an MRI in the middle of that game. And Auburn lost that game. Auburn had a double-digit lead over Oklahoma in the 4th quarter, and they lost that game. Hugh Freeze is now 8-12 in his tenure at Auburn. Brian Harsin was 9-11 when he got fired. Brian Harsin was never, winless in the SEC. Hugh Freeze is finding himself winless in the SEC 4 SEC games in. I understand Brian Harsin had some other things going on behind the scenes.
Did he though, or was that made up just to fire him with calls and not pay his buyout?
There's plenty of people that will say that. Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's the question.
That's what the people are saying.
How long till there's another Hugh Freeze scandal to get him out of his buyout at Auburn? I mean,
it's happened before.
But that would be hard to believe. Yeah,
but all I have to say, like we talk about Brian Harsin and the very short Brian Harsin era at Auburn, like Voldemort in Harry Potter, like he who shall not be named. We cannot talk about Brian Harsin. Those were some bad years. Well, Hugh Freeze now has a worse record than Brian Harsin had when he got fired. And not to mention UAB's terrible too. Tulane 70 spotted them. So just overall, the football in the state of Alabama is scary bad.
I'm excited to dive into the Auburn thing because that is a good example of how to fail as a head coach in college football with what Hugh Freeze has done. He had all the hype and excitement coming in, and he has recruited his ass off and has recruited well and has signed 5 stars and 4 stars and signed a bunch of transfer portal players, signed Keandre Lambert-Smith at wide receiver from Penn State out of the portal, signed a bunch of great players. But what did he forget about? He forgot to sign a quarterback. And in college football, if you don't have an elite quarterback, you're not going to win football games. You don't have a chance. He doesn't even have a good quarterback. I don't even know who the heck's starting quarterback at Auburn right now. Hank Brown? I mean, who? I don't even know who that
Peyton
is.
Thorne.
Peyton Thorne. Yeah, like who are these guys? So now they're 2-5. They're very unlikely to make a bowl game. And Hugh Freeze will probably get next season, but he may not make it through next season if he doesn't figure it out pretty quickly. As we see with Brian Harsin, there's not much patience at Auburn. So you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. Peyton Thorne's not going to cut it. Their backups aren't going to cut it. Brown's not going to cut it. None of them are good enough to win in the SEC.
I laughed at SEC fans that destroyed me when I said they didn't have a quarterback this summer. They're like, Peyton Thorne. To which I'm like, did you watch Michigan State at all last year? Like, if you thought Peyton Thorne was the answer, I don't know what you were watching. Here's the thing, because Caroline, you make a great point about Auburn, Alabama, the state of Alabama. Just to think about how bad it's gotten, there are certain Wizard of Oz isms in broadcasting that they give you when a game stinks. So if you have a rivalry game and the game stinks, they'll tell you, hey, don't pay attention to the records. Doesn't matter what the record is on this. You can throw all of that away. Or they spend the whole time talking about history because history matters more than what's happening on the field. There are pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We don't want you to realize this game sucks. We want you to think about how great this rivalry is because that's a reason to watch. We're going to have to do that this year with the Iron Bowl. Like, if you really think of, there's a very real chance Alabama takes another loss before they get to the Iron Bowl, which means a 3-loss Alabama team that at that point is on the outside looking into the playoffs is taking on an Auburn team that has nothing to play for. And the real scope for both of these teams is we're playing for pride. Like, that's not what the Iron Bowl usually is, and that's where it's going to be this year. And that tells you how bad things are in the state of Alabama for football. Like, I never thought we'd get to this spot this quickly where we're having to tell people how great the Iron Bowl is just to remind them that this is a game we should watch. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen in a few weeks.
Like, the Iron Bowl is going to be on ESPN+.
Yeah.
They're not putting that on cable television.
They'll get stuck with it, and then they'll be like, no, but trust me, the Iron Bowl's on. We'll show you the kick six again, and that will distract you on the fact that these two teams actually suck this year. I don't know why I made Jimmy Patero sound like that. He doesn't sound anything like that. He's a great guy.
I don't know who sounds like that, but I got the point.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And look, the Iron Bowl is, I think, one of the best rivalries in college football. It's right up there with Ohio State and Michigan and so many great rivalries in college football. And I think we can appreciate that game independently without thinking about, okay, well, this game doesn't have any implications for the playoff, or this game doesn't have any implications for the college or for the SEC championship game. Like, we'll enjoy it for what it is, and then we'll step away and say, okay, cool, congratulations, Alabama. Now you're 8-4. Great. Good job. Good job, everybody. All right, we'll take a quick break. I'm going to take a look at the Week 9 slate. Some big-time implications, also some snoozers, so we'll hit that coming up next. All right, we have decided to change the name of Binge Stream Skip to Binge Stream Sicko.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Adam. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Was at the recommendation of Adam Breneman, that no games in college football are skippable games because we love this dear sport of ours. So it's really just the games that you're watching that makes you a sicko. So what are you binging this week, Fitz?
I mean, I think LSU Texas A&M is the answer for everybody on the must-watch. You know, I think there are two games that are must-watch, but I'll start with LSU A&M because this is really such a statement opportunity. The winner of this game is going to be seen differently. There's no two ways about it, right? The loser of this game, Texas A&M loses this game. Now Texas A&M's trying to dig out of a hole. And the top of the SEC could end up just being a wild logjam depending on what happens here. I think LSU, to the point that we had earlier, as much as we've been critical of LSU at times, LSU right now is playing like one of the best teams in the country. This is their moment to show everybody that they are actually capable of winning the SEC, which I think would exceed the expectations most people have for LSU. So the prove it is on the line here for LSU Texas A&M.
This is one of those games that whenever people would say at the beginning of the season, I hate the expansion of the college football playoff because it makes regular season games matter less. I will point to this game and say, you think this game matters less? You don't think this game has massive implications and just feels like a playoff game? Because previously in a 4-team playoff, 2 teams with 1 loss, they're probably out. Like, or on the outside, near outside looking in. But now you look at 2 teams with 1 out-of-conference loss each. Winner advances, and the loser just has to hope that everything else goes their way. What else is a binge for you, Adam?
Notre Dame, Navy is the game of the weekend. None of this SEC talk.
That's
none
the
of this
Breneman
SEC talk.
of the week.
Notre Dame, Navy
Award.
is the game of the weekend. This game has serious playoff implications. Serious. For both teams, too. For both teams. Notre Dame needs to win out to make the playoff. Navy has a chance to win the AAC, probably the favorite right now to win the AAC, right up there with Army. And if Boise State loses one of those games in the Mountain West champion to UNLV, then the AAC champs got a chance to be the automatic seed for the group of 5 team. So this game is huge. The world gets to see what I see calling these Navy games now. And Notre Dame's kind of been quiet since the Northern Illinois loss. Not a lot of people talking about them. They handled Louisville, but they haven't played anyone near the top 25. Now, one thing's for certain, Notre Dame has not seen an offense like what Navy will do. This is not your grandparents' Naval Academy. This is Navy football that throws the football around, threw for 3 touchdowns against Charlotte. Their quarterback, Blake Horvath, is an unreal player. You guys will see him play. He's so gritty and tough and takes hits and throws the ball and commands that offense. The Navy's defense is really good. It's a must-win for Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame has to win this game, but Navy's going to be one of the toughest opponents that they see this season. So it'll be a fun one to watch. I have a feeling this game's going to be pretty tight, and I don't think Marcus Freeman is like this in a game. Notre Dame's like, we're going to walk all over Navy. This is going to be a close game.
Yeah, and by the way, this game should be tight because I think Navy's a lot better than people realize. And you mentioned, I mean, Navy, just the amount of times it feels like their quarterback's getting just hammered and then still gets rid of the ball. Like it's delightful to watch. There's a toughness to this Navy football team, but an openness to the offense. You're right. The world is going to discover that. Look, I'm not going to call this air raid, but the world's going to discover that they are capable of throwing the ball all over the field. It's a real challenge for Notre Dame, and Navy deserves this respect. I said it last week. I think it's dumb that game day didn't go to this game. I don't care that it's at the Meadowlands or it's in New York, I should say. I don't care what stadium it's in. This one to me feels like it hits different, and it's a real chance for the service academies to shine. I love that pick by you.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you, but if I can, poop on this party a little bit. Temple has the 84th ranked defense in college football. Memphis has the 59th, UAB the 91st, Air Force the 85th, and Charlotte the 110th. Those are all the teams that Navy has beaten. Notre Dame has the 10th ranked total defense in college football.
It's crazy how you came prepared just to trash on Navy in this segment.
I would never trash on our servicemen and women.
You were ready to come at Navy's offense.
We got out of this story that Caroline's anti-America. That's what we just figured out. Like that's fine.
She came with receipts too on the. It's a good point. They have not played many teams, which is why I'm excited to see what happens. I think Notre Dame will struggle, but it is a fair point. They haven't played the toughest slate of games.
And neither had Indiana, to be fair. And then they dropped 60 on Nebraska. So if Navy can do the same thing, then color me impressed.
I'm just going to put America the Beautiful on repeat during the game over and over and over again, and I'm going to feel America in my bones. That's
I don't hate America, okay?
Sure.
I don't know. That's what it sounded like.
I don't hate America. I love America, and I love the armed forces. I do. I just want the armed forces to play some better defenses, all right? I want more for our country.
Yeah.
All right, what are we streaming, Fitz?
No, we're streaming Boise State versus UNLV. Hello. We're streaming that game because that game has a ton of significance. Also because I do think that both of these defenses are going to be challenged. There is no way in hell that UNLV is going to be able to slow down Boise State's rushing attack. I'm pretty sure that you could put all 12 fans that are in Allegiant Stadium on the field with UNLV's defense, and it still won't make a difference. Like, it doesn't matter. UNLV cannot stop the running attack in this. So let's acknowledge that. But UNLV's offense has been humming. And I know that we made a lot about their backup quarterback coming in. There has not been a drop-off, Adam. Like this go-go offense is still go-going, right? Like, so we have to just acknowledge that UNLV's offense is creative. It's explosive. They can score from anywhere. They're going to have to because Boise State is going to be able to run all over them. This feels like video game football.
And one of the funny things, kind of the cool things to track in college football this time of year now is guys who the game outside of the game, UNLV's offensive coordinator, Brennan Marion, is now coaching for one of these head coaching or big-time offensive coordinator jobs in college football. I just saw his name on the short list for Oklahoma's offensive coordinator job. So to see what he does and how he gets creative in this game, because he knows everyone's going to be watching. This is the biggest game they played this season. To see how he kind of prepares his team and calls that game is exciting to watch, because Brennan Marion's trying to make a name for himself during this game as well. And as we talked about, this thing's got playoff implications for everybody. I mean, and that is like, Caroline, to your point about how not every when there's more playoff spots, everything's less meaningful. I've said that a bunch, but it does make these games, like Boise State UNLV, would never have playoff implications before this. But now we're like, man, if Boise wants to make the playoff, they got to beat UNLV. But what if UNLV wins? Well, also, if Boise loses, it impacts Navy and Army, and it impacts all these other teams. So I see your point there. It's pretty fun.
Friday night, 10 p.m., we're going to be watching football because of the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Like, I will sign up for more meaningful games. Sure, Georgia and Alabama maybe didn't feel the same luster as it would have last season, but it was still a really fun game. And all of these games are really important. Call me a sicko if this game is on my list of streams and not my sicko list, but I'm going to be streaming Vanderbilt, Texas. We've seen Vandy and what they can do at home against a top-ranked team in the country and what they did against Alabama. Now, I think that Texas is a better and more complete team than Alabama, but no longer is Vanderbilt the butt of every joke in the Southeastern Conference. Like, this is not your brother's Vanderbilt. And I don't say dad or granddad because Vanderbilt was bad last year. Vanderbilt lost to Georgia State just a few weeks ago. Like, this is a new thing. Like, this is not the Vanderbilt of last year. And I want to see Sark after a loss. Like how Sark-coached teams get up for a game that's probably not the sexiest after the biggest game of their season, after offensively they got embarrassed, and how they're able to regroup and play against Vanderbilt. Because we saw a Caitlin DeBoer-coached Alabama team not be able to follow up a loss as motivated and angry and pissed off as maybe we expected. If Texas wants to be a national championship contender, which I believe we all think that they are, I want to see how pissed off they can be against a Vanderbilt offense that's frankly really difficult to defend.
Also, guys, one thing a former player told me a couple years ago about Vandy, it's tough sometimes when you're used to playing in huge stadiums with a huge energy. It's tough to find the pick-me-up at Vandy, because it is a quiet stadium compared. It's a smaller stadium. It's not laid out to be as loud. I've spent a lot of time in that stadium. You can have a conversation in good seats. You can sit there and talk to your buddies during a game. Like, it is a quieter stadium. So to your point, Caroline, getting that juice after a loss, coming out really being fired up, they're going to have to be able to internally manufacture that. I think that will be interesting.
Yeah. Vanderbilt's not the team that you want to follow up a game against Georgia with, right? Just ask Alabama how that went. And this is a ranked matchup. I mean, who would have thought?
Crazy.
Vanderbilt at 5-2. So, who was the head coach last time Vanderbilt was ranked? 2013.
James Franklin.
James Franklin, Coach
Penn
Franklin.
State.
Yeah. Penn State and the Lions. So
it's like the Kevin Bacon game. Like, Adam's going to find any way to bring Penn State.
Speaking of Penn State, let me give you one more game. Let me give you one more game that is a must watch this weekend. Penn State at Wisconsin. Everyone wanted to sleep on Luke Fickell. Everyone wanted to say Luke Fickell couldn't do it at Wisconsin. Now, year two is where Fickell flipped Cincinnati into really bad to that's where they kind of hit the next step and got over the hump at Cincy. Now, Wisconsin's got 5 games left and they're 5-2. So Wisconsin is in the driver's seat. Their defense has given up, I just saw this stat, like 15 or 16 points total in the last 6 weeks. Total in the last 3 weeks, I think it was 16 points in the last 3 weeks. Crazy. Their defense playing at a crazy high level. And Penn State, number 3 team in the country. A lot of talk about, are they actually the number 3 team in the country? Every game now is a must win for Penn State, especially they got Ohio State in 2 weeks. Easy to look past Wisconsin. This game's is a big one for Penn State. And if Wisconsin can win this one, I mean, Luke Fickell's off and running.
And this game is at Wisconsin, correct?
At Wisconsin, yep.
Tough place to play.
Yep. Tough place. Yeah.
Can I give you guys a sicko game? Just real quick. Just one sicko game. Because earlier I said, we got the Wizard of Oz isms around the Iron Bowl. That's what we're doing right now with this game. But a sicko still loves a good rivalry. Michigan State, Michigan is this weekend. And
disgusting.
The funny thing is I've got a good friend that's a Michigan fan that is now convinced that they should fire the coach and just restart the entire thing. Everything should start all the way over. But we are also communally friends with a Michigan State fan who's like, hey, man, it's kind of fun. Like, the funny thing is, the record of these two teams doesn't look that different, but the way it's being received by the fan bases is wildly different, because Sparty fans didn't really think that Michigan State would be anywhere near competitive, and Michigan fans, like, they tell you they didn't care, but like, no, it's killing them that they're not. Like, this is a big statement opportunity, frankly, for Michigan State, that's having a little bit better year than I think we're giving them credit for. They've been competitive in halves against good teams. They can't put 4 quarters together, but Michigan's not a good team. So I'm genuinely interested. You got 2 new coaches setting off a new vibe of what this rivalry means. I'm interested in this one.
With how truly painful it is to watch Michigan's offense, I would say every game on their schedule except for the game feels like a sicko game, right? Like, if you're going to sit down and watch Michigan throw for 14 total yards through 4 quarters, like, you are an absolute sicko. But you make a very good point in terms of, expectations and how the fan base is feeling. It's a good thing right now that Michigan fans are pissed off. I think it's a good thing when your fan base is angry, because it means they care. If Michigan loses to Michigan State, I think we're entering apathy levels for this Michigan fan base, and we are 10 months removed from a national championship.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And Michigan State's like, they haven't played great, but they've played some pretty good football, to Fitz's point. They have 3 losses. 2 of them were to Ohio State and Oregon. They beat a pretty good Maryland team. They beat Iowa last week. So, and Aiden Chili's is a pretty fun quarterback to watch.
They lost to Boston College on a fluke weird play at the end too. Like, so they're better than that. That low expectations they're exceeding.
Yeah. We're just happy they're out there having fun. That's all we care about.
Just want everybody to make memories.
As long as they're having fun and it's a fun game, and Michigan State, Michigan like each other, that's good.
Yeah. Perfect.
I think they do like each other. Yeah, they're going to play nice. Yeah, they're definitely going to do that. All right, that is going to do it for us today. He's Jason Fitz. You can follow him on Twitter at Jason Fitz. You can follow him at Adam Breneman 81, and you can find me at Caroline Fenton 1. Always appreciate y'all for stopping by the podcast. Whether you are a repeat listener, thanks for coming back. If it's your first time, welcome into the podcast. Leave us a review. Subscribe to the podcast, like, comment, all that great things. Tell your friend about the podcast. Tell a Penn State fan about the podcast. Tell a UNLV fan about the podcast, because we're always giving them love. But we'll be back here Saturday night and Sunday morning with an immediate reaction to all of the Week 9 action in college football. We're out.